She laughed sharp, cutting. The kind that filled a room and didn't apologize for it. The pen left his hand, divorce papers. Signed, final. She leaned back, eyes bright, making sure the man outside saw through the glass. Making sure everyone heard what came next. You'll manage. Single dads do it all the time. Especially when they don't have a real job. Her lawyer pressed his lips together. Hiding a grin, the husband said nothing. Set the pen down. Slow, deliberate, stood. Walked out. In the lobby, a woman in uniform passed him. Glanced up. Good afternoon, Mr. Holloway. He nodded. Kept walking. Behind the glass, the wife was still laughing. The lawyer watched. Frowned. Just for a second. She didn't notice. Wouldn't notice. Not for 3 more days. She had no idea she'd just lost everything, including her son. The house sits on half an acre in Matthews, North Carolina. 15 minutes outside Charlotte when traffic's good, which it never is. 2 stories. Gray siding, white trim. Porch David rebuilt the summer after the wedding. Took him 6 weekends. Did it himself because the quote from the contractor made Amanda's eye twitch. From the road, it looks like every other house on the block. That's the point. David pulls into the driveway at 4 in the afternoon. Red F-150. 2008 model. Same truck his father drove until the day he died. Amanda hates that truck. She's told him. More than once. In that voice she uses when she's trying to sound like she's joking but isn't. David doesn't care. By 5, he's in the garage. Neighbor's Cessna 172 sits on a flatbed trailer. Engine trouble. 3rd mechanic couldn't fix it. Greg had rolled it over 2 days ago with a look on his face like a man bringing a sick dog to the vet. David said he'd take a look, didn't charge him. Never does. Red snap-on toolbox in the corner. Robert Holloway's name still visible on the side. Faded black Sharpie. Letters worn but readable. Leather work apron hanging on a nail beside it. Robert's too. Most of the things in David's life that matter came from his father. And most of those things Amanda has never asked about. Inside the house, Luke sits at the kitchen table. 7 years old. Homework spread in front of him. Math problems. Addition and subtraction. He chews the end of his pencil and stares at the page like it personally offended him. The bookshelf in the corner holds nothing but airplanes. Manuals. Biographies. Picture books about pilots who flew bombers over Germany and Japan in the 1940s. One of those pilots had been Luke's great-grandfather. Luke doesn't know that yet. 8:30. Bedtime. David washes his hands at the kitchen sink, scrubs the grease out from under his nails, dries them on a dish towel that's seen better days, carries a book upstairs. Small room at the end of the hall. Blue walls. Model airplanes hanging from the ceiling on fishing line. Tonight's book, The Wright Brothers by David McCullough. 3rd time through. Luke doesn't seem to mind. David reads 2 chapters. Luke's eyes start to droop halfway through the second. Then the boy closes the book in his lap. Looks up at his father. Dad? Yeah, buddy, do you know how to fly planes? David smiles. Doesn't answer directly. Never does when Luke asks that question a little. Your grandpa taught me. That's all he says. He turns off the lamp, kisses Luke's forehead, walks out into the hall, and pulls the door halfway closed behind him. Amanda isn't home yet. Hasn't been home before 9, on a weeknight in months. David doesn't say anything about it. The truth lives in small things. A letter from Consolidated Trust Bank, folded carefully, tucked into the kitchen drawer beneath the takeout menus, and expired coupons Amanda keeps saying she'll throw away, but never does. A short phone call David takes while washing dishes on a Tuesday night. Speaker off. Voice low. Yes, Catherine. I'll stop by next month. An old leather notebook in the storage shed at the back of the property. Holloway Aviation Internal pressed into the cover in gold lettering that's starting to fade. Amanda has walked past those things for 8 years. Never asked once. David never offered. That was their understanding. Though neither of them had ever named it. The barbecue happens in late spring, Saturday afternoon, May. Warm but not hot yet. The kind of day where everyone in the neighborhood drags their grills onto their driveways and pretends they know what they're doing. Greg lives 3 houses down, mid-40s, works in IT, owns a Cessna he keeps at a small airfield off Highway 49. The plane's been grounded for 6 weeks, avionics fault. 3 different mechanics have looked at it. Nobody can find the problem. Greg's on his 4th beer when he mentions it, half joking, half desperate. David listens, asks 2 questions, then offers to come take a look. Seriously? Yeah, man, I'll pay you. Whatever the shop would charge. David shakes his head. Don't worry about it. That weekend, David drives out to the airfield. Amanda comes along. So does Melissa, a younger woman from Premier Realty Group where Amanda works. The kind of woman who holds a wine glass like someone once told her it photographs well. Greg's wife is there too. Nice woman. Brings out cheese and crackers on a tray like they're at a gallery opening instead of a dusty hangar. David spends 40 minutes under the wing of the Cessna. Flashlight in one hand, multimeter in the other. He finds a corroded ground wire tucked behind the avionics rack. Hidden, easy to miss if you're not looking for it. He fixes it. Takes him 10 minutes. When he powers the plane up, the panel lights come on clean. No faults, no warnings. Greg nearly drops his beer. Holy shit. How'd you? He reaches for his wallet. David wipes his hands on a shop rag. Shakes his head. Don't worry about it, man. Where'd you learn to do that? David thinks about it for a second. My father. That's all he says. 20 feet away, Amanda stands near the open hangar door. Melissa, beside her. Wine glass in hand. Going warm in the afternoon sun. She hadn't heard the conversation, only saw her husband. Bent under someone else's airplane. Same flannel shirt he's worn for 10 years. Knees in the dirt. Hands black with grease. Melissa says something. Low, probably meant to be supportive. Amanda can't quite make it out. She laughs. Half a second too late. Inside out the hangar, Luke sits on a metal stool. Eating a popsicle Greg's wife gave him. Watching his father through the open bay door. He doesn't say anything. Never does when David works. Just watches, the way he always does. Something finishes in Amanda that afternoon. She'd stopped looking at David a long time ago. But the not looking had become a choice somewhere along the way, a slow erosion she hadn't paid attention to until it was too late. Now it settles. Final, David doesn't see it happen. Luke doesn't either, but it happened. Amanda's promotion comes 2 weeks later. Commercial accounts. Premier Realty Group. Bigger title, bigger clients, bigger everything. With the new title comes a different room of the world. Dinners at restaurants, where the wine list is longer than the menu. Clients with second homes on Kiawa Island. Husbands in tailored sweaters who fly private to Aspen for long weekends and post pictures of themselves squinting into the sun. She starts bringing the comparisons home, not in arguments. Amanda's too smart for arguments. They come like water, finding its way through a ceiling. Slow, steady, impossible to point at. Why don't you expand the business, David? She says it over breakfast one morning. Coffee in hand, eyes on her phone. David doesn't answer. You're still driving that truck? She says it while they're loading groceries into the back. Her voice light, almost teasing, almost. David sets a bag down, closes the tailgate, says nothing. Don't you want anything more? She says it on a Thursday night. After Luke's asleep, they're sitting on opposite ends of the couch. A rerun of something neither of them is watching plays on the TV. David doesn't answer, and the silence becomes part of the leak too. The text comes on a Thursday night. 10 o'clock, Brian Foster. David's oldest friend since high school. Fixes transmissions for a living. Shop off Independence Boulevard. The kind of guy who notices things other people don't, bro. Saw Amanda having drinks with some guy at Upstream. Third time this month. Thought you should know. David reads it. Doesn't reply. Sets the phone face down on the kitchen counter. Stands at the window looking out at the backyard. Doesn't move for a long time. Upstairs, Amanda's already in bed. Or pretending to be. David doesn't go up to check. The dinner happens on a Thursday in late April. Restaurant in Dilworth. Amanda picked it because someone she wants to impress is a regular there. David doesn't ask who. Doesn't really care. 6 people from Premier Realty. David sits beside a hedge fund manager named Todd, who will not stop talking about wine. Every bottle has a story. Every vintage has a memory. Todd's been to Napa 4 times and wants everyone at the table to know it. David nods when it seems appropriate. Says nothing. Halfway through the appetizers, someone at the far end of the table asks the question Amanda's been waiting for. Amanda, what does your husband do for a living? She smiles. The smile's been waiting. Oh, David does some freelance work. Little of this, little of that. The table laughs. Polite. The way people laugh when they're not sure if something's a joke. Todd claps David on the shoulder like they're old friends. Must be nice, man. Being your own boss. David nods. Smiles the way you smile at strangers in elevators when you've got nothing to say. He doesn't speak again until they're in the car. Amanda drives home. She's been drinking. 2 glasses of wine, maybe 3. She doesn't realize it, or doesn't care. David doesn't say anything about it. 3 blocks from the house, she lets out a soft sound. Half sigh, half laugh, stares at the road ahead like she's talking to it instead of him. You know, sometimes I think Luke would grow up faster in a different environment. Her voice is light, casual, like she's trying the sentence on. Seeing how it sounds, he needs to see the real world. Not just toolboxes and old machines. David's hand tightens on the door handle once, then lets go. She doesn't notice. She turns into the driveway, gets out, walks into the house without waiting for him. David sits in the truck for a minute. Engine off, keys still in the ignition. When he finally goes inside, Luke's already asleep, curled toward the wall. One small hand tucked under the pillow. David stands in the doorway for a long time, and for the first time in his life, he lets himself hold a word he's never let himself hold before. Lose him. That's the word. Not lose Amanda. He's already lost her. Has known it for months. Maybe longer, but lose Luke. That's the thing that sits in his chest and won't move. He goes downstairs. Sits in the dark kitchen until almost midnight. The phone lights up at 11:40. Text from Brian Bro. Amanda had dinner with Kenneth Pierce again last night. 4th time in 3 weeks. I didn't want to be the one to say it, but you needed to know. David reads it twice. Doesn't reply. Stands. Rinses his coffee cup. Sets it on the drying rack. He already knew, not about the name. Kenneth Pierce. That's new. But the rest of it. He'd known the shared iPad sits on the counter. Amanda uses it for work. Forgets to log out half the time. Google search history from 2 weeks ago. Kenneth Pierce, Apex Capital. Commercial real estate broker, Charlotte. Best restaurants, Charlotte business dinner. She'd forgotten to delete it. Or maybe she hadn't cared. David had seen it. Hadn't said anything. His father's voice in his head. Clear as if Robert were standing right next to him. The man who needs to confront is already losing. The man who knows? He waits. So David waited. 11 days later, Amanda tells him. Tuesday, 9:30 in the evening. She comes home. Sets her purse on the counter. Doesn't take off her coat. Says it the way someone might cancel a dentist appointment, David. I want a divorce. Pause. I've been thinking about it for a while. I need someone with a vision that matches mine. She looks at him. Not unkindly, just distant. You're a good man. You're just not the man I need. David stands at the sink, dish towel in his hand. He listens. Doesn't put the towel down. She's already chosen the lawyer. Stephen Blake. Blake and Associates. Someone at Premier Realty recommended him. The signing will happen next Friday. Law office on South Boulevard. It's near Signature Flight Support, she says. Like that means something. Convenient. Then, Kenneth and I are flying to Miami right after. She says his name, the way you say the name of someone who's been waiting months to be said out loud in a kitchen. David nods once. Still doesn't put the towel down. Amanda turns to go upstairs. At the foot of the steps, she stops. Like a thought just occurred to her. Casual. Weightless. Oh. By the way, she turns halfway back. Those trust funds your dad set up. Do you actually have access to those? Or is it more of a name-only kind of thing? David looks at her. For one full second, he understands everything. Where Kenneth Pierce has been steering her. What's been talked about in restaurants, where the wine costs more than his truck. Why a divorce that should have been settled in any conference room is being signed at a law office that happens to share a parking lot with a private FBO. Apex Capital wants Holloway Aviation Group. And Amanda is the door. He turns off the faucet, folds the towel over the rack. Good night, Amanda. She watches him for a moment. Almost disappointed that he didn't give her anything to work with. Then she goes upstairs. David stands at the sink for a long time after that. He has 2 choices. He could open the kitchen drawer right now. Pull out the letter from Consolidated Trust Bank. Hand it to her. Watch the floor drop out from under her feet. Or he could stay quiet. Let the next move come from her side of the board. Robert had taught him well. Real money doesn't announce itself, son. People who show off are scared. Scared of being forgotten. Live right and people will remember you for who you are. Not what you own. David had heard it so many times growing up. On the porch of the old place in Huntersville, Sunday afternoons. October light slanting through the trees. Robert had said it for the last time 6 months before he died, slowly. Like making sure it would stick, and it had. David turns off the kitchen light. 1 in the morning. David makes the call, hasn't dialed the number in 2 years. Catherine Walsh picks up on the 3rd ring, which is how he knows she was waiting. Catherine, I know who it is, David, he tells her. Briefly, what Amanda said about the divorce. about the office near the airport, about the question at the foot of the stairs. Catherine breathes once on the other end of the line. Doesn't sound surprised. Then David asks the only thing that matters, if this turns into a fight over Luke, over custody. What do I need to start putting together? A small sound comes back through the line. Not quite a laugh. Not quite a sigh, David, she says. Her voice is steady. The way it always is. Your father started putting that together before you could read. David closes his eyes. Outside, the porch light throws the pale rectangle across the front lawn. Down the hall in Luke's room, the boy turns in his sleep, pulls the blanket up over his shoulder. David stands in the kitchen a long time after he hangs up. Then he goes upstairs. Stands in the doorway of Luke's room, doesn't go in, doesn't want the boy to wake up and see his face. The signing happens the following Friday. 11 in the morning. Small law office on South Boulevard. Second floor. Conference room with a view of the parking lot. The office shares that parking lot with Signature flight support. From the front window you can see the chain-link fence. The line of corporate jets sitting on the apron. The small glass lobby, where pilots come in to file their flight plans. David parks the F-150 in the back row, away from the windows. Walks in alone. Amanda's already there. Charcoal blazer. Hair pulled back tight. The kind of lipstick she only wears for closings. Stephen Blake sits beside her. Earlefoyt footies, expensive suit. Cologne that probably costs more than David's monthly grocery bill. Someone at Premier Realty had recommended him. Said he was good. Kenneth's outside in the lobby, leaning against the wall. Charcoal overcoat. Hands in his pockets, watching through the glass. The papers are stacked neatly on the table. David sits down, picks up them, starts signing, page after page. He doesn't read them. Catherine had read them for him 3 days earlier. Circled what mattered. Everything else is just paper. That's when Amanda laughs. Short, cutting, triumphant. The kind of laugh a woman makes when she's finally taken what she wanted and stopped pretending to hide it. She tilts her head toward the glass. Make sure Kenneth sees. You'll manage, David. Her voice carries. Deliberately, single dad life. It's not easy. Especially when you don't even have a real job. Stephen Blake presses his lips together, hiding a smile. David says nothing. He sets the pen down, slow, deliberate, looks at Amanda for 1 full second, then stands. Walks out of the conference room. In the lobby, a woman in a Navy Signature flight support polo walks past. Clipboard in hand. Heading toward the front desk, she glances up, offers a quiet, professional nod. Good afternoon, Mr. Holloway. David nods back, keeps walking. Stephen Blake is watching from the doorway of the conference room. Signed papers in his hand, he frowns. For the first time that morning, looks at Amanda. Still laughing, looks back at the lobby, tucks the papers into his briefcase. She has no idea yet what just happened. Won't know for 3 more days. By then, it will be too late. 3 days later, Monday afternoon, Amanda calls the bank. She'd been in Miami over the weekend with Kenneth. Hotel on Collins Avenue. 2 dinners she'd paid for. Told herself it was an investment. Kenneth had been distant. Checked his phone through every meal. Took calls outside on the balcony where she couldn't hear. By the time she landed back at Charlotte Douglas on Sunday night, she'd already decided to stop telling herself anything. Just start moving the pieces. She calls Consolidated Trust Bank from her desk at Premier Realty. Pleasant voice. Professional. Uses her maiden name. I'm just trying to understand what's in my husband's portfolio. We're in the middle of a divorce. My counsel needs the information by Friday. She waits. A polite man on the other end tells her, with great patience, that the trusts associated with Mr. David Holloway were structured under North Carolina law and a Delaware domiciled holding entity, that the original framework was established prior to the marriage, with premarital funds, that while North Carolina is an equitable distribution state, premarital trusts funded with premarital assets are generally protected from marital claims. He uses the phrase spendthrift trust. He uses the phrase irrevocable. He tells her very kindly that the framework had been set in place more than 3 decades earlier, reinforced over the years, that every layer had been written specifically to keep the family-held aviation assets out of any future spouse's reach. Amanda sets the phone down, looks at her hand on the desk. It's shaking. 3 decades. She does the arithmetic in her head. David would have been a child, 5 years old, maybe 6, decades before they'd ever met, before she'd ever heard the name Holloway. His father had sat with a lawyer at a kitchen table somewhere and built a wall against women like her. Before she was even born, for the first time something cold runs the length of her spine. Not because she'd lost a battle, but because she understands, with absolute clarity, that she'd been losing it before she'd ever met the man. His father had built the wall decades before, and David had never needed to defend it, because the wall had already been there waiting. She doesn't tell Kenneth, doesn't tell Stephen Blake. She pours a glass of wine in her kitchen at 6 that evening, watches the ice melt, tells herself the trusts don't matter, that the real money would be somewhere else, somewhere reachable, somewhere a clever lawyer could pry open with the right kind of leverage. She has no idea yet what kind of leverage Kenneth's been quietly sharpening for the last 15 months. David by then already knows. Brian had been working on it since the night David called him from the kitchen. Brian's not a private investigator. He's a mechanic. Fixes transmissions for a living. Shop off Independence Boulevard. But his brother-in-law works at the Mecklenburg County Clerk's office. And another friend in commercial real estate owes him a favor, going back to 2014. That's enough. By Monday morning, Brian comes to the house, manila folder in hand, doesn't sit down. I'm going to tell you what I found. Then I'm leaving. Because if I sit down, I'm going to start cussing. And Luke's upstairs, Luke's at school, David doesn't correct him. What Brian found is this. Kenneth Pierce isn't just a man Amanda's been having dinners with. He's a commercial real estate consultant. Works with an investment group called Apex Capital Partners. Private equity outfit, headquartered in Charlotte. Portfolio that's been quietly buying up small charter aviation companies across the Southeast for the better part of a decade. Apex's playbook is simple. Dined a regional charter operator. Strong route rights. Aging owner. Approach them. If they sell, fold them in. If they don't, wait years, wait for retirement. Divorce. Death, wait for the soft moment when family-held aviation assets can be reached through a side door. Holloway Aviation Group has been on Apex's list since 2012. Brian doesn't say it like an accusation. Says it like a man laying down a tool. Bro. The dinners with Kenneth didn't start last year. He flips a page in the folder, shows David a photo. Kenneth Pierce and Amanda. Outdoor seating at a restaurant in Uptown. 15 months ago. Instagram post. Deleted now. But Brian's friend had screenshots. Amanda's hand on Kenneth's arm. Both of them laughing, capital. Great conversation with amazing people. 15 months before the promotion, before the comparisons started coming home, before the humiliating dinner in Dilworth. Kenneth had found Amanda first, had built her slowly. The way a man builds a tool. David already knew that too. What he didn't know yet. What he's beginning to understand only now on a Monday morning in his own kitchen is the size of the question underneath all of it. How much of this had Amanda known? Had she been a partner in the steering? Or a passenger? Had Kenneth told her what he was really after? Or had he let her believe she was special? David doesn't have the answer. Isn't sure he wants one. He thanks Brian. Closes the folder. Puts it on top of the refrigerator. Behind the cookie tin Luke can't reach. Then he picks Luke up from school early. They make pancakes that afternoon, 3:30. Sun still high over the backyard. Not pancake weather. Not pancake time. But Luke had asked for pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. And David has a folder on top of the refrigerator he's not ready to open again. So he stands at the stove with a ladle, tries to make a T-Rex. It comes out shaped like a lopsided lizard. Luke laughs, loud the way a 7-year-old laughs when his father, who is very good at most things, is not very good at this one. David laughs too. He sits down at the kitchen table, watches his son eat lopsided lizards with too much syrup, and decides 3 things in the space of a single breath. He will not move first. He will not raise his voice. And he will not under any circumstance let this child be used as a chip on someone else's table. That night after Luke's asleep, Brian comes back over, 2 beers. They sit on the porch in the dark. David says the thing he's been carrying since Sunday. Sometimes the strongest move is to let the other side think they're winning. Brian doesn't answer, just listens. Because once they're sure they're winning, that's when they show you how far they were willing to go. Brian clinks his bottle against David's once. Drinks. They sit in silence for a long time. Then Brian speaks. You think she knew about Apex? David stares out at the dark yard. I think she knew Kenneth was pushing her towards something. Whether she knew what that something was, he trails off, Doesn't matter now. Yeah. I guess it doesn't. The first phone call from the trust bank comes on a Thursday. 2 in the afternoon, David's under a Honda Accord. Oil change for a neighbor. His phone rings. Mr. Holloway. This is Consolidated Trust Bank. We've received a formal request, filed by Blake and Associates on behalf of Amanda Holloway, asking that Holloway Aviation Group be revalued and disclosed as part of the marital estate. The bank's tone is professional. Slightly amused, we're treating it as nuisance correspondence. But we're obligated to inform you. David wipes his hands on a rag. I understand. Thank you, he hangs up, stares at the phone for a long moment, then slides back under the Honda. But his mind's not on the oil filter anymore. That same evening, David's house. An email arrives at 5:47. He doesn't recognize. No signature. No subject line. The body is 3 sentences long. Your father didn't sell the company because he knew who was behind the offer. They came back. Open box number 7 in the storage shed. David reads it twice, rinses his hands at the kitchen sink, walks out the back door. Across the yard, the storage shed at the far edge of the property had been Robert's old workspace, hauled in piece by piece after the funeral 5 years earlier. David had moved most of the contents out, but the steel shelving along the back wall held a set of long flat boxes. Robert had labeled them, by hand, pencil. Numbers 1 through 12. David had never opened most of them, hadn't been ready. Box 7 is halfway up the shelf. He pulls it down, sets it on the workbench, turns on the overhead light. Inside, a folder. Yellowed at the edges pages of typed correspondence, dating from 2010 and 2011. Letters from a Charlotte-based investment group. Different name then. Meridian Holdings, but David recognizes the directors listed at the bottom of the letterhead. Same people, running Apex Capital now. 3 written offers for Holloway Aviation Group. Escalating in price. 3 written refusals. Robert's handwriting. None more than 2 sentences long. The last refusal had been written in pencil. Yellow legal pad. Clipped to the top of the file. Not now. Not later. Not to you. Underneath the file at the bottom of the box. The leather notebook. The same one David had seen on the shelf at the back of the shed for years. Had never opened. Holloway Aviation Internal pressed into the cover. He sits down on the work stool. Opens it. 30 pages of Robert's handwriting. Hangar leases. Route notes. Names of pilots Robert had trusted. Pilots he hadn't. Notes about maintenance schedules, client relationships, things that kept the business running. Then, near the back, a page dated 3 years before Robert died. Steadier hand than the rest. A single short entry. If you are reading this page, son, it means they have come back. Do not fight them in the open. They will not attack you. They will attack what you love most. Protect that first. Then think about winning. Dad, David closes the notebook. Sits in the yellow light of the shed for a long time. And for the first time since the day Robert's casket had been lowered into the ground, at Pinewood Memorial Gardens, he lets himself cry. Not for Amanda. He has no tears left for Amanda. He cries because a man who's been gone for 5 years is still somehow holding a hand over his son's house, still protecting them, even from the grave. When he comes back inside, it's past 10. Catherine Walsh is sitting at his kitchen table. She'd let herself in with a spare key. The one David had given her 2 years ago. The week after Luke's birthday, the way she'd always preferred. No doorbell, no announcement. Glass of water in front of her. Small manila envelope, sealed. Resting on the table beside it, David looks at the envelope, sits down across from her. She slides it across the wood without speaking. The handwriting on the front is Robert's. Below the name David in smaller letters, 3 words, when all else fails. The envelope had been dated July 2020, 6 months before Robert Holloway had died. David breaks the seal with his thumb. Inside, 4 pages. Typed, then signed. A complete contingency plan, trust restructuring instructions, custody protection clauses, cross-reference to North Carolina Family Code, a pre-prepared response to any third-party attempt to access Holloway assets through marital litigation. Names of the judges most likely to be assigned the case. Names of the firms that had ever shown interest in the company. Notes beside each. Apex Capital Partners is on the list, underlined twice. Next to it, Robert had written in pencil, "Watch for approach through family. They won't buy. They'll manipulate." David sets the pages down, very carefully. Looks at Catherine. He knew. Before I even met her. Catherine doesn't answer right away. turns the glass of water between her fingers. Quarter turn, he didn't know about Amanda. David, pause, didn't see her face. Couldn't have. She looks at him. What he knew was that someday someone would come at the company through the only door it ever had. Through the family. Another pause. He didn't predict your wife. He predicted human nature. David looks at the pages on the table, at Robert's signature at the bottom of each one. He understands something then. Something worse than betrayal. He had not been winning this game, had not even been playing it. The game had been won decades before he sat down at the board, by a man who was no longer alive to watch the pieces move. His phone rings on the counter. He doesn't have to look. He knows the timing. Picks it up. Stephen Blake's office. The voice on the line is professional. Practiced. Careful, Miss Holloway's counsel is filing in the morning. An emergency motion to modify the existing custody arrangement. Pause. The grounds are concerns regarding the father's lack of stable demonstrable income and his ability to provide a suitable educational environment for the minor child. David thanks him. Calmly. Hangs up. He stands at the counter for a moment. Phone still in his hand. The seed Amanda had planted in the car 11 nights earlier. Luke would grow up faster in a different environment. Had just bloomed. Catherine watches him from the table. Speaks quietly. They're trying to force a settlement. Get you to trade custody for company access. I know. Your father anticipated this exact scenario. She taps the pages. Everything you need is right here. David sets the phone down, looks at her. All right. Now we move. David doesn't move that night. He sits at the kitchen table with Catherine for another hour, going through the contingency pages. Line by line, she explains each clause, each protection, each pre-built response his father had written into the framework 30 years ago. Most of it David doesn't fully understand. Legal language, trust structures, Delaware entities, but he understands enough. Robert had seen this coming. Not Amanda specifically, but someone like her. Someone who would see the quiet life and mistake it for weakness. Who would look at the truck and the flannel and the garage full of tools and think there was nothing underneath. Robert had known that kind of person would come eventually, and he'd built walls to keep them out. Catherine leaves at 11:30, quietly, the way she always does. No ceremony. I'll see you Tuesday, David, at the courthouse. David turns off the porch light, goes upstairs, stands in the doorway of Luke's room. The boy sleeps on his side, blanket pulled up to his chin. One small hand tucked under the pillow. David doesn't go in, just watches, memorizes the moment. Because in 2 days he's going to walk into a courtroom and fight for the right to keep doing this. The right to stand in this doorway. The right to be Luke's father in more than just name. Saturday morning. David makes pancakes again. Luke sits at the kitchen table, still in his pajamas. Hair sticking up in 3 different directions. Dinosaurs again? You got it, buddy. This time the T-Rex comes out better. Still lopsided, but recognizable. Luke grins. They eat in silence for a while. Then Luke looks up. Dad, yeah? Is Mom coming back? David sets his fork down, carefully. She's got her own place now, buddy. But you'll still see her. I promise. Luke nods, goes back to his pancakes. The boy didn't ask if his parents were getting back together. He asked if his mother was coming back. And those are 2 very different questions. That afternoon, David and Catherine go through the contingency plan again. This time at her office, small building off Providence Road. 2nd floor, windows that look out over a parking lot full of sedans that have seen better days. Catherine's been practicing family law for 38 years. Since before David was born, she'd been Robert's attorney first, then a family friend, then something closer to family than friend. She spreads the pages across her desk, commate to the custody protection clauses. Your father built these specifically for North Carolina. If Amanda files for modification, the court has to consider several factors. Stability, primary care caregiver history, financial ability to provide. She taps the page. You've been Luke's primary caregiver since Amanda's promotion 15 months ago. You're the one who makes breakfast, packs his lunch, does homework, bedtime routine. The court will see that. David nods. What about the income thing? Blake's gonna argue I don't have a real job. Catherine smiles. Small. Almost sad, David. You own a commercial aviation company with 3 hangar leases and a fleet of charter aircraft. You hold an active Part 135 operating certificate from the FAA. Your tax filings show consistent revenue for over a decade. She leans back in her chair. Stephen Blake is about to have a very bad day in court. Sunday. David takes Luke to the park. They throw a football back and forth. Luke's getting better. His throws wobble less than they used to. After a while, they sit on a bench near the playground. Luke swings his legs. Doesn't quite reach the ground. Dad? Yeah, buddy. Are you scared? David looks at his son, 7 years old. Old enough to know something's wrong. Not old enough to understand what. He thinks about lying, decides against it. A little. Luke thinks about that. It's okay to be scared. David almost laughs. Who told you that? You did. When I was scared of the dark. David puts his arm around the boy's shoulders. Yeah, I did. They sit like that for a while. Then Luke looks up. Are we gonna be okay? And David doesn't hesitate, because some questions you don't hesitate on, even when you're not sure of the answer. Yeah, buddy. We're gonna be okay. Tuesday morning. The hearing is set for 2 in the afternoon. David spends the morning with Luke. They go to the diner on Providence. Order pancakes even though they'd had pancakes 3 days in a row. Luke doesn't seem to mind. Dad? Yeah? After this is over, can we go see the planes again? David looks at his son, the planes, at the airport. The white one. I liked that one. David's throat tightens, because Luke doesn't know yet. Doesn't know that the white one. The Hawker 800 XP sitting on the apron at Signature Flight Support. Belongs to them. Will belong to him someday. If David can keep it. Yeah, buddy. We can go see the planes. 1 o'clock. David parks at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. Big concrete building downtown. Looks like every other courthouse David's ever seen. Which is exactly 2. Catherine's waiting for him on the steps. Gray suit. Same one she's been wearing to court for 15 years. Accordion file in one hand. Black coffee in the other. She doesn't look nervous. Which makes David feel slightly less nervous. Slightly. They walk in together. Take the elevator to the 3rd floor. Small windowless courtroom at the end of the hall. Smells like old paper and floor wax. Amanda's already there, sitting at the petitioner's table. Navy dress. Silver chain. Hair pulled back so tight it looks like it hurts. Stephen Blake beside her. He glances up when David walks in. Offers a professional nod. David doesn't return it. He sits down next to Catherine at the respondent's table. Sets his phone on silent. Waits behind them. The gallery is mostly empty. Except for one person, 3rd row, Kenneth Pierce. He'd come in late. Taken a seat near the aisle. Hands folded in his lap, watching David sees him. Doesn't react, just turns back to face the front. Catherine leans over. Whispers, he shouldn't be here. David's voice is quiet, doesn't matter. He will be soon enough, 2 o'clock. The bailiff stands. All rise, everyone stands. Judge Margaret Calloway walks in, woman in her mid-60s, short gray hair. Reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She's been on the Mecklenburg County family bench for 22 years. Catherine had told David that this morning. Had also told him that Judge Calloway does not suffer fools, which David took to mean that Stephen Blake was about to have a bad afternoon. The judge sits, everyone else sits. She opens the file in front of her, rides for a moment, then looks up. This is a motion to modify custody filed by the petitioner Amanda Holloway. Mr. Blake, you may proceed. Stephen Blake stands, bothers his jacket, walks to the podium like a man who's done this 1,000 times, which he probably has. Thank you, Your Honor. He glances down at his notes. The petitioner seeks modification of the current custody arrangement, based on concerns regarding the respondent's ability to provide a stable environment for the minor child. Pause. Specifically, we have concerns regarding Mr. Holloway's lack of demonstrable income. His employment is sporadic at best. He identifies himself as self-employed in mechanical work, but has no business license. No fixed location. No employees. Stephen looks up. The petitioner believes that the minor child would benefit from a more structured environment. One where educational opportunities are prioritized. Where stability is guaranteed. He flips a page. Ms. Holloway has recently been promoted to a senior position at Premier Realty Group. She has a stable income, a benefits package. She is prepared to provide the child with access to private education, extracurricular activities, everything a child needs to thrive. Another pause. The respondent, by contrast, has demonstrated no fixed professional standing in the community. He says it again. No fixed professional standing in the community. Like saying it twice makes it more true. We ask the court to modify the custody arrangement to reflect the best interests of the child. Stephen sits down. Amanda's looking straight ahead. not at David. Not at the judge, just straight ahead, like she's trying to convince herself this is the right thing. Judge Calloway makes a note. Then looks at Catherine, Miss Walsh. Catherine stands. Doesn't button her jacket because her jacket doesn't have buttons. Doesn't walk to the podium. Just walks straight to the bench. Sets her accordion file on the edge. Slides one item across the wood toward the judge. A single business card, cream-colored stock. Black ink. Holloway Aviation Group LLC President and Sole Trustee. David R. Holloway. The Judge Calloway picks it up, looks at it, then looks at Catherine. Catherine opens the accordion file. Starts pulling out documents, one at a time. Setting them in a neat stack on the bench, Your Honor. The respondent is the sole owner and operator of Holloway Aviation Group, a commercial aviation company established in 1992 by his father, Robert Holloway. She sets down the first document. 3 decades of audited financial statements showing consistent revenue and growth. Second document. Corporate structure, Delaware domiciled parent entity. Fully compliant with state and federal regulations. Third document. Hangar leases at 3 regional airports. Concord Regional in North Carolina. Greenville Downtown in South Carolina. Fulton County in Georgia. Fourth document. Fleet of 6 aircraft. 4 Cessna citations. 2 Hawker 800 XP jets. All with current certificates of airworthiness. Fifth document. Active FAA Part 1 and 35 operating certificate, which means Mr. Holloway runs a fully licensed commercial charter operation. She pauses, lets that sink in, then pulls out the last document. And finally, an educational trust established in the name of Luke Holloway on the day of his birth by his grandfather, Robert Holloway. Currently valued at enough to cover tuition room and board at any university in the country. She looks up at the judge, with money left over. The courtroom is very quiet. Stephen Blake's face has gone a shade paler. Amanda's staring at the stack of documents like they appeared out of thin air. Catherine isn't done. She pulls out one more file. This one sealed with a red evidence sticker, Your Honor. This morning I filed documentation with the North Carolina Attorney General's office and the Federal Trade Commission. She opens the file, identifying a pattern of conduct by Apex Capital Partners, a private equity firm based here in Charlotte, specifically their attempts to acquire Holloway Aviation Group through what I can only describe as targeted personal relationship channels. She sets down a page. This documentation names Kenneth Pierce as an independent contractor working with Apex Capital. It details his 15-month relationship with Ms. Holloway, and it identifies 2 prior instances where Mr. Pierce developed personal relationships with spouses of target acquisition owners. Pause. Both of which resulted in divorces. She looks directly at Stephen Blake, both of which resulted in subsequent acquisition of those companies by Apex Capital Partners. Catherine sets the file on top of the stack. The filing also names Blake & Associates in a footnote as counsel of record for Ms. Holloway, filed 14 days after she retained your services, which happens to coincide with Mr. Pierce's introduction of Ms. Holloway to your firm. Stephen Blake stands up. Your Honor, I. Judge Calloway holds up one hand. Sit down, Mr. Blake. He sits. The judge picks up the file Catherine just set down, reads. Doesn't look up for almost 3 full minutes. The silence stretches. Amanda shifts in her seat. Stephen Blake's fingers drum once on the table, then stop. In the 3rd row, Kenneth Pierce stands up. Doesn't say anything, just picks up his coat from the bench beside him, walks the length of the row to the aisle. Out the courtroom doors. The bailiff watches him go. The door swings closed. Soft sound. Amanda doesn't turn around to watch him leave. That's the last time she sees him. Judge Calloway finally looks up, not at Catherine, not at David, at Stephen Blake, counsel. Would you like to revisit your characterization of the respondent's income and professional standing? Stephen Blake opens his mouth, closes it. Opens it again. Your Honor, if I may. This is new information. We were not aware. You were not aware that your client's boyfriend was working for a private equity firm, actively trying to acquire her husband's company. Stephen's face flushes. No, Your Honor. You were not aware that your client's husband owns a multi-million-dollar aviation business? No, Your Honor. Judge Calloway sets the file down. I find that difficult to believe, Mr. Blake. She looks at Amanda. Ms. Holloway, did you know about your husband's business? Amanda's voice comes out smaller than David's ever heard it. I knew he worked on planes. Did you know he owned the company? Silence, then, No. Judge Calloway leans back in her chair. You were married for 8 years. Yes, and in 8 years, you never once asked your husband what he did for a living? Amanda's eyes drop to the table. Doesn't answer. The judge looks down at the papers in front of her, makes a note, then looks at Stephen Blake. Mr. Blake, I'm denying your motion to modify custody. Stephen stands, Your Honor. Sit down. He sits. Judge Calloway continues. I find that the petitioner's motion lacks merit and appears motivated by financial interest rather than the child's welfare. She flips a page. Custody of the minor child Luke Holloway is awarded to the respondent David Holloway. Pause. A visitation schedule for the petitioner will be established in a separate hearing, to be scheduled within 30 days. She looks at Amanda, Ms. Holloway. You will have the opportunity to maintain a relationship with your son, but you will do so on a schedule determined by this court. Do you understand? Amanda nods. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Calloway closes the file. We're adjourned. Gavel. David doesn't celebrate. Doesn't smile. Just turns to Catherine. Gives her a single small nod. She nods back. They stand. Walk out of the courtroom into the bright fluorescent hallway. Brian's waiting by the elevator. Luke at his side. The boy's holding a paper bag from the diner across the street. Probably a cookie. Brian spoils him. Brian claps David once on the shoulder hard. Doesn't need to say anything. The three of them ride down to the parking garage in silence. Luke looks up at his father. Did we win, Dad? David kneels down, eye level with his son. Yeah, buddy. We did. Luke hugs him, tight. David closes his eyes, holds his son, and for the first time in 3 weeks he lets himself believe it might actually be over. It's not over. That night David sits at the kitchen table, laptop open in front of him. He replies to the email from last week. The anonymous one that told him to open box number 7. Types 2 words. Thank you, Catherine. Sends it. 4 minutes later a reply comes back. Different email address. But he knows the writing. How did you know it was me? David types slowly. Because my father told me more than once that there was exactly one person on earth he trusted without condition. And because you've never stopped protecting us. Even when you thought I couldn't see you doing it. He hits send, waits. The reply comes back almost immediately. Your father would be proud. David closes the laptop, sits in the dark kitchen for a while, thinks about Robert, about the 30 years of planning, about the walls his father had built to protect family that didn't exist yet, about the trust his father had placed in Catherine to carry those plans forward after he was gone. And for the first time since Robert died, David feels something close to peace. Wednesday morning, David gets a call from an unknown number. Mr. Holloway? Yeah, this is Detective Sarah Chen. Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department. I'm calling regarding a complaint filed yesterday afternoon. David sits up straighter. What kind of complaint? Kenneth Pierce filed a harassment complaint. Claims you've been following him. Sending threatening messages. David almost laughs. Almost. I haven't spoken to Kenneth Pierce. Ever. That's what I thought. The complaint's pretty thin. No evidence. No witnesses. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Pause. Off the record. Guy seems like he's scrambling. Probably won't go anywhere. Appreciate the call. No problem. She hangs up. David sets the phone down. Kenneth's scared. Which means Apex is probably cutting him loose. Which means Kenneth's about to find out what it's like to be on the other side of a corporate steamroller. David doesn't feel bad about it. Not even a little. Thursday. Amanda texts. First time since the courthouse. Can we talk? David stares at the message for a long time, then types back. About what? 3 dots appear. Disappear. Appear again. About Luke. About visitation. About everything. David thinks about ignoring it. But that's not what his father would have done. Robert would have faced it head on. 12th Street coffee. Tomorrow. 1:45. Just you. The reply comes back fast. Okay. Friday. 1:45. David sits at a table near the back. Black coffee in front of him. 3 things in the messenger bag beside him. Amanda walks in at 1:50 wool coat. Hair down. No makeup. She looks tired. Older than she did a week ago. Different somehow. She orders coffee at the counter. Doesn't drink it. Sits down across from David. For a long moment, neither of them says anything. Then Amanda breaks the silence. I didn't know. David doesn't respond. About Kenneth. About Apex. About any of it. Her voice cracks. I thought he was just interested in me. David sets his coffee down. When did it start? 15 months ago. Real estate conference in Atlanta. He approached me after a panel discussion, said he'd heard good things about Premier Realty, asked if I wanted to grab a drink. She looks down at her hands. We talked for hours. About work. About goals. About everything. Pause. He made me feel like I was more than just someone's wife. David's jaw tightens, but he doesn't interrupt. Amanda continues. After that, we'd meet for coffee, lunch, dinner. He'd ask about my work, about my clients. He seemed genuinely interested. She wipes her eyes. Then he started asking about you. What did you tell him? Everything. That you worked on planes. That you didn't have a real job. That we lived in a regular house and drove old cars, and I didn't understand why you were content with so little. Her voice gets quieter. He told me you were probably hiding something. That men who live that far below their means are either broke or hiding money. She looks up at David. He convinced me you were insulting me by pretending to be poor. That the truck and the flannel in the garage were a message. That you thought I wasn't worth more. David leans back in his chair, watches her, sees it clearly now. Kenneth hadn't just used Amanda. He'd rebuilt her, slowly, carefully. Over 15 months, turned her into exactly the tool he needed, and she'd never seen it coming. Amanda keeps going. He told me I deserved better. That I should find out what you were really worth. And if you were hiding assets, I had every right to go after them. Pause. He even recommended Stephen Blake. David closes his eyes for a moment, opens them, looks at Amanda. His voice is quiet when he speaks, not angry, just tired. That truck was my father's. I keep it because it's the only thing he left that still smells like him. Amanda's face crumples. David continues. You lived in the house with me for 8 years, Amanda. You never asked once. Not about the truck, not about the work, not about what I did all day. Pause. I would have told you. If you'd asked. Amanda's crying now. Full tears. I'm sorry. David reaches into the messenger's bag, pulls out the first item, a photograph. Kenneth Pierce in a hotel bar. Ocean Drive, Miami. Last Saturday night, arm around a blonde woman who is not a man. The woman's laughing at something Kenneth said. Kenneth's looking at her the way men look at women they're not afraid of being seen with. Brian's brother-in-law had taken it from across the bar with a phone camera. David slides it across the table. Amanda looks at it, goes very still. Her hand trembles slightly as she picks it up, studies it, sets it down like it burns. David pulls out the second item, a thin folder, inside. Photocopies of 3 pages, letters from 2010 and 2011, correspondence between Apex Capital's predecessor entity and Robert Holloway. The last page has Robert's handwriting, not for sale. Not now, not later, not to you. Amanda stares at it, doesn't pick it up. David pulls out the third item, a photograph of Luke. Just a photo, their son on his blue bicycle in the driveway. Last September, helmet crooked, grinning at the camera. One front tooth missing. Amanda's hand reaches for it, stops shaking. She picks it up with both hands, like it might break. David speaks. His voice is steady. What do you think you were fighting for, Amanda? Not really a question, more like a statement. Amanda doesn't answer for a long time. When she does, her voice is broken. I don't know anymore. David leans forward. You can withdraw the appeal. Go back to work. Live your life. We'll set up a visitation schedule for Luke. He needs his mother. Pause. Or you can keep fighting. And if you do, all of this comes out, not just Kenneth. Your part too. He taps the photo of Kenneth with the blonde woman. I don't care about your reputation, Amanda. But I will not let our son grow up thinking his father was a man who lost. Amanda looks at the photo of Luke, holds it carefully, studies their son's face. I need some time. David nods. You've got until Monday. He stands, doesn't pay for the coffee, doesn't say goodbye. Just walks out into the afternoon light on 12th Street, gets in his truck, drives home, doesn't look back. Monday morning, Stephen Blake's office calls. David answers. Mr. Holloway. This is Jennifer from Blake & Associates. Mr. Blake asked me to inform you that Miss Holloway has decided to withdraw her appeal. David closes his eyes. Okay, we'll be filing the withdrawal this afternoon. You should receive confirmation by end of business. Thank you. She hangs up. David sets the phone down, walks into the living room where Luke's watching cartoons, sits down on the couch next to him. Luke looks up. You okay, Dad? David pulls his son into a hug. Yeah, buddy. I'm okay. Luke squirms a little but doesn't pull away. Can we still go see the planes on Saturday? David smiles. Yeah, we can go see the planes. That same evening, 615 small studio apartment. 3rd floor of a building off Belmont Boulevard. 1 window. Looks out at the brick wall of the next building. Amanda sits on the edge of her bed, phone in hand. She's been scrolling for 20 minutes. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Doesn't know what she's looking for until she finds it. Someone from Premier Realty had reposted a photo. Charity benefit at the Charlotte Flight School. Yesterday, in the background, almost out of frame, two figures standing beside the white hawker. A man in a dark jacket, a small boy with a juice box, both facing the plane. No caption, no tag. Amanda had not been mentioned. She looks at the photo for a long time, doesn't save it, doesn't send it to anyone, just turns the phone face down on the comforter. For the first time in years, she has nothing to say. Not to her firm, not to her friends, not to herself. Phone buzzes, unknown number. Amanda, it's Melissa from Premier. Heard what happened. I'm so sorry. Let me know if there's anything I can do. Amanda stares at the words everyone knows. She deletes the text. Doesn't reply. Another buzz. Stephen Blake, we need to discuss visitation schedule. Court requires response by Friday. Visitation schedule. She's not the primary parent anymore. She's a visitor to her own son. Amanda looks at the brick wall outside her window. No tears left, just empty. This is what she chose. This is what she gets. She turns off the lamp, sits in the dark, and for the first time in 15 months, she's completely alone. No Kenneth whispering in her ear. No comparisons to make, no ladder to climb, just silence. And the slow realization that she traded everything that mattered for something that was never real. Saturday, May. David takes Luke out to signature flight support for the first time. The long glass window of the lobby looks out onto the apron. Luke presses his hands flat against the glass, nose almost touching. Late afternoon sun lights up the aluminum skin of a White Hawker 800 XP. Beside it a smaller Cessna Citation. Matte gray. Beyond both the long shape of the runway. Sky going pink at the edges. Luke doesn't take his eyes off the Hawker. Dad, whose planes is that one? David kneels down. One knee fax level with his son. Your grandpa left that to me. And one day, if you want it, it'll be yours. Luke thinks about that for a long moment. Doesn't move from the window. Do I have to learn to fly it? David smiles. You have to learn to be a good man first. Flying's the easy part. Brian walks up behind them. 3 coffees and a juice box. Hands the juice box down to Luke. Luke takes it without looking away from the plane. Brian stands next to David at the window. You ever regret it, man? Not saying anything from the start. David watches Luke. The boy's tracing the outline of the Hawker's tail on the glass with one finger. Moving his lips, repeating the registration number to himself. Like a song. If I'd said it from the start, I'd never have known who was actually with me. Pause. And Luke. He'd have grown up thinking his father was someone you needed to hand a list of things to before you respected him. Brian takes a sip of his coffee. Your dad would have been proud. David nods. Doesn't trust himself to speak. The three of them stand at the window for a long time. Watching planes taxi. Watching the sun sink lower. Luke finishes his juice box. Turns to David. Can we come back next week? Yeah, buddy. We can come every week if you want. Luke grins. Goes back to watching the Hawker. David stands, puts his hand on his son's shoulder, and thinks, we're gonna be okay. 3 weeks pass. David establishes a routine, because that's what you do when the ground stops shaking. You build something steady on top of it, Monday through Friday. Wake up at 6. Make breakfast. Pack Luke's lunch. Drive him to school by 7:30. Work from 8 to 3. The hangar at Concord Regional. Maintenance schedules, flight logs, client calls. Pick Luke up at 3:15. Homework at the kitchen table. Dinner at 6. Bedtime at 8:30. Saturdays they go to the airfield. Luke's learned the registration numbers of all 6 aircraft. Can recite them without looking. Sundays they do nothing. Pancakes, cartoons. Sometimes the park. It's a good routine, Sybil, which is exactly what they both need right now. The first visitation happens on a Saturday in June. Amanda picks Luke up at 10 in the morning. She's early. Pulls into the driveway at 9:50. David watches from the living room window. She gets out of her car. A Honda Accord. Not the BMW she used to drive. That's new. Or maybe not new. Maybe just different. Luke standing at the door, backpack on, ready to go. David kneels down. Eye level. You got everything? Phone? Charger? Yeah, Dad. You call me if you need anything. Okay? I know, I'm serious. Anything. Luke rolls his eyes. The way 7-year-olds do when their parents are being overprotective. Which they are. David opens the door. Amanda's halfway up the walkway. She stops when she sees him. For a moment, nobody moves. Then Luke runs past David, straight to his mother. Amanda drops to her knees, catches him, holds him tight. David can see her shoulders shaking. He looks away, gives them a minute. When he looks back, Amanda's standing, one hand on Luke's shoulder. She looks at David. I'll have him back by 6. Okay, we're just going to the science museum. Maybe lunch after. Sounds good. Amanda nods. Turns to go, then stops. Looks back. Thank you. David doesn't say anything. Just watches them walk to the car. Watches Amanda buckle Luke into the back seat. Watches them drive away. Then he goes back inside. And the house feels too quiet. Brian calls at 11. How you holding up? David's standing in the kitchen, staring at the empty chairs. Fine, liar. David almost smiles. I'm fine. Really? First visitation's always weird. Yeah? Pause? You want to grab lunch? I'm off today. David thinks about it. The empty house. The quiet. Yeah. Okay. They meet at a barbecue place off Central Avenue. The kind with picnic tables outside and a line that wraps around the building on weekends. They get lucky. Only 3 people ahead of them. Order pulled pork sandwiches and sweet tea. Sit at a table under a tree. For a while, neither of them talks. Just eat. Then Brian sets his sandwich down. You hear about Kenneth? David looks up. No? What? Apex dropped him. Officially. Released a statement yesterday, saying they'd terminated their relationship with all independent contractors, pending an internal review. David takes a sip of tea. Internal review. That's corporate speak for covering their ass. Yep, pause. There's more. What? North Carolina Real Estate Commission opened an investigation. Based on the documentation Catherine filed. Brian grins. Dude's probably gonna lose his license. David leans back. Thinks about Kenneth. About the 15 months he'd spent building Amanda into the perfect tool. About the 2 other women before her. The 2 other companies. About how many times Kenneth had done this. How good he'd gotten at it. And now he's scrambling. Filing harassment complaints that go nowhere. Losing contracts. Facing investigations. David doesn't feel sorry for him. Not even close. Good. Brian raises his tea. Amen to that. Luke comes home at 6:05 smiling, talking a mile a minute about the planetarium show and the dinosaur exhibit and the sandwich shop, where Amanda took him for lunch. David listens, nods, in the right places, asks questions. Did you have fun? Yeah. It was awesome. Good. I'm glad. Luke goes upstairs to put his backpack away. Amanda's still standing in the doorway. David hadn't invited her in. She doesn't ask. He's a good kid. David nods. Yeah, he is. Pause. I signed the papers. For the visitation schedule. Every other weekend. 1 weeknight dinner. Alternating holidays, I know. Catherine told me. Amanda shifts her weight. I got a new apartment. 2-bedroom. So he can have his own room when he stays over. David nods again. Because there's nothing to say to that. Amanda seems to realize it too. Okay. Well, I'll see him next Saturday. Okay. She turns to go, then stops. Agan David. He looks at her. I really am sorry. And for the first time, David believes her. Not because it changes anything. It doesn't. But because the woman standing in his doorway doesn't look like the woman who laughed in the conference room 7 weeks ago. That woman had been confident. Sure of herself. This woman looks tired. Smaller somehow. Like she finally understands what she lost. David nods. I know. Amanda walks to her car. Drives away. David closes the door. July. The temperature climbs into the high 90s. North Carolina summer. The kind that makes the air feel like it's trying to suffocate you. David spends most of his days at the hangar, climate controlled. 68 degrees year-round. He's got 3 charter flights scheduled for the week. Business clients. Charlotte to Atlanta. Charlotte to Nashville. Charlotte to Miami and back, routine stuff. He doesn't fly them himself anymore. Hasn't in years. Hired pilots for that. But he still does the pre-flight inspections. The maintenance. The paperwork. Because some things you don't delegate. Luke comes with him sometimes, sits in the hangar office. Does summer homework. Or more often, doesn't do summer homework, just watches the planes through the window. One afternoon, David finds him standing on the apron, staring up at the hawker. What are you thinking about, buddy? Luke doesn't look away from the plane. Grandpa. David's throat tightens. Yeah, you said he taught you to fly. He did. Do you miss him? David stands next to his son. Looks up at the hawker. Every day. Luke's quiet for a moment. Then, do you think he'd be proud of me? David kneels down. Puts his hands on Luke's shoulders. Buddy. He'd be so proud of you he wouldn't know what to do with himself. Luke looks at him. You think so? I know so, and David means it. Because Robert would have loved this kid, would have taught him everything. About planes, about business, about what it means to be a man who keeps his word. Would have been the kind of grandfather every kid deserves. David wishes every day that Robert had gotten the chance, but wishes don't bring people back. So he does the next best thing. He tells Luke stories about the old man who built an aviation company from nothing, who never raised his voice, who taught his son that real strength is quiet. And he hopes that's enough. Mid-July, Catherine calls David. We need to talk. Her tone sets off alarms. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. But I got a call this morning from an attorney in Raleigh. Pause. Representing Apex Capital. David sits up straighter. What do they want? They want to buy Holloway Aviation Group. Silence. Then, you're joking. I'm not. They're offering $12 million. Cash. Closing within 60 days. David's head spins. $12 million. For a company Robert built over 30 years. For hangars and planes and routes and relationships. For the thing Luke will inherit someday. Tell them no. I already did. Good. Catherine's quiet for a moment. Then, David. That's a lot of money. I don't care. You should care. $12 million is generational wealth. You could retire tomorrow. Set Luke up for life. Never work another day. David's voice goes flat. My father told them no in 2011. I'm telling them no now. If they call again, you tell them the same thing he wrote on that yellow legal pad. Pause. Not for sale. Not now, not later. Not to them. Catherine doesn't argue. Okay. She hangs up. David sits in the hangar office for a long time after, thinking about the number. $12 million. He could sell. Take the money. Move somewhere quieter. Smaller. Give Luke a childhood that doesn't involve charter flights and maintenance schedules. But then he thinks about Robert. About the 30 years his father spent building this. About the walls Robert built to protect it. About the notebook in the storage shed with the message, written 3 years before Robert died. Protect that first. Then think about winning. David's not selling, not today, not ever. October, the second offer comes. Catherine calls on a Tuesday. They're back. David doesn't need to ask who. How much? $15 million. David's in the hangar office. Paperwork spread across the desk. He sets his pen down. You told them no. I told them I'd relay the offer to my client. Tell them no. Catherine's quiet for a beat, David. That's $3 million more than last time. I don't care if it's $30 million. The answer's no. Pause. They're not going to stop. Then they're going to be disappointed a lot. Catherine sighs. But there's something like approval in it, okay? I'll tell them. She hangs up. David goes back to his paperwork. But he can't focus. $15 million. The number sits in his head. He thinks about what that could buy. A bigger house, better schools for Luke. College paid for 10 times over. Security. Freedom, everything most people spend their whole lives chasing. And David could have it with one signature. Except it's not his to sell. Not really. Robert built this for Luke. For the grandson he never got to meet. And David's not going to be the one who trades that legacy for a check. No matter how many zeros it has. November. School's in full swing. Second grade. Luke's teacher is a woman named Mrs. Patterson. Mid-50s. Kind eyes. 20 years of experience. She emails David after parent-teacher conferences. Luke's doing great in class. Bright kid. Asks good questions. Wanted to touch base about his home situation. I know from the records that custody recently changed. Just want to make sure he's adjusting okay. David writes back. He's adjusting well. Thanks for checking. Let me know if you notice anything concerning. Mrs. Patterson replies within an hour. Will do. He's a sweet kid. You're doing a good job. David stares at that last sentence for a long time. You're doing a good job. He's not sure he believes it. Most days he feels like he's barely holding it together. But maybe that's what doing a good job looks like. Barely holding it together and showing up anyway. December passes in a blur of holidays and visitation schedules. Amanda takes Luke for Christmas Day. David has him Christmas Eve. They make it work. It's not perfect, but it's enough. January, Luke turns 8. David throws him a party at the hangar nights. Luke's entire second grade class. 23 kids, plus parents. The hangar's chaos. Kids running everywhere, asking questions. Touching things they probably shouldn't. David gives them a tour, shows them the Cessnas, lets them sit in the cockpit of the Hawker, one at a time. Under supervision, Luke's in heaven. Grinning, showing off. That's my dad. He owns all of this, pride in his voice. David's chest swells. Because for the first time, Luke understands. Not just that David works on planes, but that David built something real. Something that will be his someday. After the party, Luke helps clean up, picks up paper plates, wants away napkins. Dad, yeah buddy, this was the best birthday ever. David ruffles his hair. Good. I'm glad. Can we do it here every year? We'll see. Luke grins, runs off to help Brian stack chairs. David watches him go and thinks, yeah Dad, we're gonna be okay. February, first Saturday. David takes Luke to the airfield. Like always, they walk out onto the apron. Stands in front of the Hawker. Luke's gotten taller. Doesn't have to stretch as much to see into the cockpit windows. Dad, yeah? When can I learn to fly? David looks down at his son, 8 years old. Robert's eyes, Robert's quiet way of asking questions. You've got to be 16 to solo, 17 to get your license. That's forever. David smiles. Tell you what, when you're 10, I'll start teaching you the basics. Ground school. How the controls work. How to read the instruments. Luke's face lights up. Really? Really? Promise? Promise. Luke throws his arms around David's waist, squeezes tight. Thanks, Dad. David holds his son. Looks up at the Hawker, thinks about Robert, about the legacy being passed down, father to son, generation to generation. And he understands now what Robert was protecting. It wasn't the planes. It wasn't the business. It wasn't even the money. It was this moment, standing on an apron with his son, passing down something that matters, teaching him that real strength is quiet, that the things worth keeping are the things you build with your own hands, that some things you don't sell, no matter what they offer. David closes his eyes, feels the sun on his face, the weight of Luke against his side, and thinks, I get it now, Dad. I finally get it. Later that evening, after Luke's in bed, David sits at the kitchen table, opens his laptop, new email from Catherine, subject line, one more time, pay $18 million. Same terms, 60-day close. They're very persistent. David doesn't hesitate, hits reply, type as one sentence, not for sale. Not now, not later, not to them, sends it, closes the laptop, leans back in his chair, exhales, and for the first time in almost a year, he feels at peace. Because some things are worth more than money. Some things you don't sell. You protect them, you pass them down. You teach your son that the quietest man in the room is sometimes the only one who understands the game was already won. Not by him, but by his father. Decades before any of this started, David stands, turns off the kitchen light, goes upstairs, checks on Luke one more time. The boy's asleep, blanket kicked off as usual, one arm hanging over the side of the bed. David pulls the blanket back up, tucks it around Luke's shoulders, kisses his forehead, whispers, love you, buddy. Then he goes to his own room, lies down, closes his eyes, and sleeps, the first real sleep he's had in a year. Because the war's over, the wall's held, and tomorrow they start building something new, together.